keeping you up to speed on all your Colorado teams. It's time for Coffee Break.
Happy Monday to you all. And I got to be honest, for a day of the week that normally just drags, something about this Monday felt a little different. I got up before the crack of dawn, got a run in. The air felt a little crisper, filled up my coffee this morning. It just tasted a little bit sweeter. And the only thing I can think of is that the drought is over. And I think that has just made everything on this blistery Monday a little bit cheerier and a little bit warmer. Wouldn't you say, James?
Yeah, Richie, like the long, just meandering walk through the desert that was the NFL playoffs for the Broncos is finally over. Finally over. First time since Super Bowl 50. They're back. Nearly a decade-long drought, which is hard to believe. But yeah, man, it does put a little bit of a smile on your face. It's nice.
It really does. Because again, I think that it's hard to appreciate where you are or where you're going if you detach from where you've been. And I think that we had no way of knowing in February of 2016 about what the next 8 years or so was going to be like, from Trevor Siemian to Case Keenum and Jeff Driscoll and Drew Lock and Teddy Bridgewater and Brett Rippon and who am I forgetting? Joe Flacco.
Philip
Lindsay for a game.
Yes.
It's just like the Brock Osweiler again. Just this entire washing machine of misfortune and dysfunction that we were headed for. And a lot of times, I'm going to be honest in there, it felt like as a Broncos fan, I was like, hey, we may never get out of this. They just may never. It's a franchise that's never successfully drafted and developed a quarterback, with the most successful example being Tim Tebow. And there felt like there was no end in sight. And every time we reached for a solution, one wasn't there. And now, for the first time in a long time, more so than the 5-game sample from Drew Lock, more so than the 9-7 season and Pro Bowl alternate Trevor Siemian and all that. It feels like we may have established roots in something genuine and real that can make the Broncos truly competitive again for years to come.
Feels like they're close, right? And that's going to sound funny, given the fact that they just finished a 10-win season, that they just clinched their first playoff berth. I know Broncos country's excited. I'm excited. Lifelong Broncos fan, right? I'm just cautiously optimistic. And I know you're not going to want to hear this, but
I already don't.
What they faced yesterday was not a true NFL test. That was a layup, gimme. Shouldn't even have bothered playing the game.
Nobody said that it was, but it's not like they snuck by that at 13 to 3.
I get it.
They beat them 38-0.
But Andy Reid told you all you need to know. He did not want the Cincinnati Bengals as the 7 seed going to Buffalo because they could win and then be in Kansas City.
He also didn't want to dial up any special sauce that they want to conserve for the post.
2 weeks from now, they could be hosting the Broncos.
All of that is true, and I hope that they do. But man, I just got to say, you can say what you want about strength of schedule, this or in-game management at times here and there and other stuff. The bottom line is they did it. They got to 10 wins in the same swing, James. They got their first winning season since 2016 and their first playoff berth since 2015, something that all the other coaches and quarterback combos and GMs and ownership groups and all that tried to do before, and they did it, and they deserve recognition and credit for that.
I'm not taking it away. All I'm saying is, if we're looking at it of, hey, did they get to 10 wins? Yes. Did they make the playoffs? Yes. Are those two things worth celebrating? Yes. But do they have the answers? I'm still not sure. We're going to find out more on Sunday.
How can you ever be 100% sure?
I was 100% sure Peyton Manning was the right guy.
Really? In the signing of Peyton Manning in 2012, coming off of an unbelievable neck surgery.
After his first season, even though they lost in the playoffs to Baltimore, after his first season, I'm like, yep, that's the guy. Like, I knew. We knew. Do you think they know in Washington?
James, but Peyton also had like a decade-plus career of body of work.
Well, you just asked, are you ever 100% sure?
But what I'm saying is, even with that decade body of work with Peyton Manning, I wasn't 100% sure that first year.
Here's the game I like to play when I'm watching the Broncos. Could I have made that throw? There were two throws yesterday that I'm like, no, I can't make that throw.
No, James, you listen, I'm going to give you.
It's a fun game. You should try it.
I'm going to give you a slight acknowledgement of the fact that we had like a Nerf football throwing thing with one of those funny like torpedo shaped footballs, and you did throw the ball surprisingly far, and I don't mean that as a backhanded compliment. I just was not expecting you to throw it as far as you did. But I'm not going to let that parlay into you being able to make NFL. You're like the guy, you're like, there's a survey that goes out to men every single year, and there's like an irrational number of men who think they could beat a grizzly bear in a fight.
No.
You're one of those guys.
No.
You are. Yeah. You're like, oh, I mean, listen, is there fish in the area? Is it,
hang on,
do I have
hang
the
on.
high ground?
Let me give you an example. Could I catch a snap, fake a handoff, and throw a wide receiver screen to Marvin Mims that he runs for a touchdown? Yes, I could.
I disagree. I just disagree.
Why? What about that is difficult?
Because there's so much going on in that moment and the timing with which you have to do it. I'm just saying.
Well, I'm not saying I don't practice it a couple of times, but it's not a difficult throw.
I'm not even letting you take me down this wormhole. I want to talk about the game in and of itself. I know that it was against some backups. I think in total there were 13 Chiefs starters that didn't play or played very insignificant snaps. But were there any moments in the game or anything surrounding it that stood out to you in a sense that gave you optimism and positivity going forward?
Well, I think it's the same thing I've said about the other victories, right? Like, yeah, they've played some bad teams, and for the most part, they went out and spanked those teams, right? They didn't squeak by the Saints. They didn't squeak by the Falcons. They didn't squeak by the Chiefs backups yesterday. They went out and won 38-0. If they won 13-7, you and I'd be having a different conversation.
Very much
same end result, right? 10-7, going to the playoffs, and be like, oh my God, you just barely snuck by the backups. You got to go to Buffalo. So that's reason for encouragement. I think if you want to go, this feels a little moral victorious, but let's go there. If you want to look at the two previous games, they played well enough to win in Cincinnati. They played well enough to win in LA. They didn't, but they hung in there on the road. They played well enough to win in Kansas City earlier in the year, even though they didn't. So that gives me hope that they can go to Buffalo and put forth that kind of performance. Really, aside from the blowout loss at Baltimore, which was kind of a really bad 5-minute stretch, with halftime sandwiched in the middle there.
Yes, exactly.
They were competitive in every single loss. So that gives me hope. And again, people think I'm knocking this team when I say they haven't beaten anybody. They haven't. But they've also blown most of those teams out. So, okay, that's reason for encouragement.
I'll give you, there's the handful, because I actually got to go to the game yesterday. It was kind of an
I saw your social media posts. Yeah.
Unexpected thing.
Fancy.
So I got to go to the game.
You're pretty low.
Yeah.
Good
Section 125. What's up? Holler.
But
the touchdown catch to Vele, which I believe put them up 21-0 at the time.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Those are the kind of moments where when they happen in a game, you just look to yourself and be like, everything's breaking our way.
Yeah.
And I know it was against the backups, but if it had happened, that was just one of those moments where it just feels like everything's going to break your way and it's reassuring. But it also, in connection with a couple of other moments I want to bring up, gave me like an overarching good feeling that I have optimism about. The second moment, which is more of a collection of plays, was the 11-minute 5-second touchdown drive.
Yeah.
That they put together, because that to me is a moment where I realize, like, hey, as a team that is kind of coming out of the gates hot with a rookie quarterback and still has some growth and maturing and development and roster building to do, that style of play is how you can beat teams that are better than you on paper. For example, when we're about to go up against the Buffalo Bills in a week, the Broncos, as a team that is outgunned at the quarterback position when you take them head-to-head, probably takes an L at the skill position on offense as well. Sometimes the best defense is a good offense. And we've seen that. We've seen teams try to take that approach with Patrick Mahomes. If you give Patrick Mahomes anything more than 11 seconds, he's probably going to make you pay, in certain situations. So that gave me optimism for that. And the last moment that really stuck out to me was the massive quarterback run turned lateral turned illegal forward pass penalty play for a couple different reasons. One, I just keep wanting to see Bo Nix run the ball more. And I know it's not necessarily the healthiest reliance of things, but he's really good at it. And he seems to have a savvy about when to do it and how to, the right angles to take. 2, forget the headiness of like a quarterback looking to make that move, right? To pitch it to Javonte. And I don't even want to go down the wormhole of illegal forward pass, because I think this is it's BS that was even called back, because by all intents and purposes, it was not a forward pass.
It was not.
It moved forward because of the momentum of the ball carrier, but
Correct.
The hand was moved backwards and the player had to run forward to get it.
Correct.
So I don't even want to get into that. That right there, then and there, in the offseason meetings for next year, amongst other things like changing the stupid kickoff and a lot of other things, I want the NFL to adopt rugby rules when it comes to lateral passes now. Because in rugby, that's a fair play, and that's a massive.
So in rugby, they account for the physics of the ball is moving with speed at the time.
Yes,
it's pitched.
they don't disqualify the motion based on forward movement that is like caused, like you said, by physics or by science of momentum.
Correct.
It was intended as a backwards lateral. When Bo Nix released the ball, Javonte Williams was behind him.
Correct.
Therefore, it's a backwards pass.
Well, what about the kick? Not to go too far down this, but what about the kickoff? Do you want to change the onside portion of it?
Yes, 100%.
Make it 4th and 15.
Yes,
and,
or at a bare minimum, a team should never have to declare that they're going to kick it onside.
Yeah, it's silly.
Okay, are we going to do that with trick plays too? Like, hey, just so you know, this is a double pass.
Yeah,
you know?
No, it's silly. I think the other thing, and they may do this one, I think they need to outlaw the quarterback slide. It's too hard for defenders.
Yeah.
And when a quarterback slides, they put themselves in such harm's way that they can't protect themselves. If you start running as a quarterback, you're a running back. That's it. A running back can't slide. That's just got to, and it kind of ties into, you want to see Bo Nix run more. Okay, then he needs to get out there and run like a running back, not a quarterback. I think
he does for the most part.
I think he does too. But
to get back to get the whole point of me bringing up that play was, to me, that play, even though it got called back and I was furious, it was indicative of an offensive unit spearheaded by Bo Nix, but really encompassing the surrounding cast, the offensive line, really the entire unit, that has established a rhythm and a flow with each other. It may not always play out that way. They're going to have inefficient moments of it, but teams that are disjointed, offenses that are disjointed or have a lack of connectivity there, they're not looking to take that extra thing. How can we turn a 55-yard play into a 75-yard play, right? That's the kind of thing we see from Dan Campbell and Jared Goff and Amon-Ra St. Brown pitching it to Jahmyr Gibbs on a hook and ladder play. You know what I mean? Like that, to me, and that's not something we've seen from a Broncos offense, really, even dating before 20. You'd have to go back to like 2013 when we were rewriting the record books, kind of thing.
It's a group that's all on the same page.
100%. And I found that to be the headiness of Devon Vele to be able to in the end zone when the ball was tipped around and it was hot potato, for him to be able to be heads up and aware in a position to make that play in the first place. It just feels like there's a connectivity and a flow and a rhythm with this offense amongst themselves, regardless of how it translates on the scoreboards. They're on the same page and they're in sync with each other to a degree that I found encouraging.
Yeah, no, the awareness is good. They're dialed in. I mean, clearly they were dialed in and the Chiefs were not. Yeah. The Chiefs had no interest in being there. But no, I think you make a good point. I think it's a group that's all on the same page. I think for the most part, knock on wood, they've all remained relatively healthy. So now you're 17 games in of same quarterback, same offensive line, same skill guys. Whether you think those skill guys are elite, average, or below average, it's been the same group. So that's allowed them to get on the same page. So no, it was a fun game. It was a ton of fun. Like if you're a Broncos fan, they won 38-0. It was a rout. They were doing whatever they wanted. There were some crazy, wacky plays. How much do you put into it? I don't think you put anything into it, but that's not a negative. That just means I don't think we should look at it and say, well, if they play Kansas City in 2 weeks, if they upset Buffalo, they beat them 38-0 last time they played. Doesn't matter at all.
No,
I do hope it burns the Chiefs, though. I hope the Chiefs, I hope it's the Broncos,
who aren't going to play for 3 weeks,
but whoever they play, I hope they lay an egg in their first.
Well, listen, they've kind of sputtered, and they've been a team this season that has won games somewhat in spite of themselves, in a sense that just like clearly they don't have the same kind of firepower offensively that they've had. They haven't found ways to click like that, but they have so much success as a team and so much chemistry together through years of building around Mahomes that if they're within a score with 5 minutes left, they can be the big brother playing with the little brother in the driveway. It's like, all right, let's get it. We've sucked for 35 minutes. We're going to be good for this next 5.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
For sure.
So, I want to touch on Bo Nix specifically, because even though he was playing against, a bevy of second stringers, kind of the backup squad, I do think it's worth, acknowledging that he did in that specific game what he was supposed to do. There was no struggle.
Yeah.
He blew through him like tissue paper, to the degree where, statistically speaking, he set some franchise records. You see his stats up there on the screen. 26 and 29 passing. He started his first 18 passes were completions, which is a franchise record for the Broncos. The other franchise record he set was completion percentage at 89.7%, which tops Peyton Manning's single game franchise record for a completion percentage. You look at the 4 touchdowns. He honestly probably had a shot to get a couple of more, but they kind of faltered on the possession coming in, up into halftime, and then they put the backups in late in the game. But the 4 touchdowns last night, or yesterday, gave him 29 on the season, which put him 2 shy of the rookie record, which is 31, held by Justin Herbert, who had his rookie season during COVID, where it was arguably a little bit easier for NFL offenses in general. So factoring in that Bo Nix in his first year, with a good defense, but a defense that we weren't sure about coming into the season, and an offensive bevy of weapons that leaves a lot to be desired, especially in the run game, for a rookie quarterback to throw up 29 touchdowns against 12 interceptions, 4 of which came in the first couple weeks, with a 66% completion percentage and 3,800 yards passing. Is there a whole lot not to like there?
No. There's not. There's a lot of things to be encouraged by. I do think, and this again is not a knock, I do think he kind of looked like a guy that was given the answers to the test before the test. Like Sean Payton drew things up, and this is what coach should do.
I was going to say, for
the rookie quarterback to have success. But, of those 29 touchdowns, how many of them were on bubble screens? How many of them were Nate Atkins dragging across the middle?
Does it matter though?
Yes,
it really matters. So when you look at a game, at a game where they win 45-14, you're going to sit there and go, well, how many of those 45 points were on passes of 12 yards or more?
You got to be able to do things that other players can't do.
So do you get more points on the scoreboard?
No.
If you throw a 60-yard touchdown, is it like fantasy where you get like bonus points for long touchdowns, but a short, or do they all just count for 6 points?
No, they're all the same. I'm just saying, if you're evaluating and if you're scouting it and you're looking at it, you just look at the stats, 29 touchdowns versus some guy who threw 27. That doesn't make him a better quarterback just because that stat. You got to look at each individual throw. And again, and this isn't the number, but if I'm applying my test and 26 of them, I could have made that throw. It's not really that impressive.
You got to get off this. If you keep saying that you can make all these throws,
impressive. I'll go throw that ball 80 yards again. I mean, I don't mean to sound like Uncle Rico. It was 80 yards.
It was not 80 yards.
Richie, I'll find the video. We can post it. It was
Dante
80
was
yards.
There. I remember. We did a whole
He
thing.
doubted me too.
I did. That's for sure.
I'm just saying, a lot of those touchdowns yesterday, Jarrett Stidham could have made all those throws.
I swear to God. No, he couldn't. He couldn't make those throws. You know why, James? Because he's not good enough to start in the NFL.
Okay.
He doesn't even get the opportunity to try to make those throws.
And here's the other thing.
He's such a bad quarterback. I cannot believe on this day of all days, you're going to bring up Jared freaking Stidham.
Here's the other thing. And I also think it's painfully obvious. And look, this is a compliment of Sean Payton. It's painfully obvious that how different their game plans are and what they're doing this year versus last year.
Sure.
Part of that's he's got a guy who can execute it.
Correct.
But part of it is we didn't see any of these kind of well-designed, like, oh my gosh, you're out scheming the opponent, where it's like, that's creative. That's clever. The kind of stuff you see on a weekly basis from, Ben Johnson up in Detroit or Kevin O'Connell in Minnesota. Like we're seeing that.
It's pretty obvious why.
Because he wants one guy to succeed and he wanted the other guy to fail.
No, you couldn't. The Broncos could have done a lot worse than 8 and 9. And it's not all just because of Russell Wilson. Sean Payton schemed up to the best of his ability, even though he knew it wasn't going to work. You don't think he could have tanked? You don't think he could have just gone out there? Russell Wilson held on to the ball too long.
Won't let him tank.
Russell Wilson held on to the ball too long. He was responsible for a significantly higher number of sacks, and he was not able to utilize the middle of the field. Those were aspects of his skill set that were deficient to run the style of offense that Sean Payton has run for 20 years in the NFL. He handpicked Bo Nix as a quarterback who would be better at doing those things, and that is why you're seeing a different result and a different look offensively.
I think it's a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. I don't like this guy. I'm going to set him up for failure. I like this guy. I'm going to set him up for success. It's not a knock. It's just human nature. And he got 26 touchdowns, 8 picks last year, 29 when he got benched for 2 games. It would have been the same numbers. They got the same results.
You're living in a world. No, they didn't.
If they'd have played the B team last year in a couple of games, they'd have got 10 wins.
You're living in a world where you think that Sean Payton, who we all aspire as this like egomaniac, crazy competitor, all that stuff, that he would just put himself intentionally in a position to not win as many games as he could in order to fulfill a prophecy that really can just be explained without any kind of misdirection.
You want to know my prime example of this? The Washington game last year. Russ throws the Hail Mary on the final play of the game to cut it to 2. Right? Yeah, cut it to 2. 35-33.
Yeah.
They run a play for the 2-point conversion to tie it and force overtime. Cortland Sutton gets mauled in the end zone. Not a great play call, but he gets mauled in the end zone. Should have been interference. Sean Payton doesn't react at all. I would have been losing my mind in 7th grade football if that's not called. He doesn't react at all.
Oh
Why?
My gosh,
because he didn't care.
You are Zapruder filming the hell out of these in hindsight. That is a crazy connective
He would
tissue
go nuts now if his guy Bo didn't get that call. He would lose it. He didn't last year because it was like,
James, he's trying to win every game.
I'm not saying it's intentional. Intentional is sabotage.
Oh my
I don't think he sabotaged him, but setting someone up for failure is an unintentional act.
I disagree, because I think Sean Payton, who, by the way, with this last regular season win, eclipsed the 170 win mark, which puts him in some pretty rare air categorically when you look at the other coaches that are right around there. Tom Coughlin, Mike Shanahan. There's a couple other that are tied right up there with him. He's not trying, I think, at any point, subconsciously or explicitly, to lose football games. It was just a pairing that didn't work. And frankly, there might be some of those thoughts going on in Pittsburgh right now with the way that the Steelers have ended the season.
I don't disagree, but do you think Sean Payton liked Russell Wilson and wanted Russell Wilson as his quarterback?
Well, those are two different things.
I think the answer to both is no.
Yes, but just because that may be true, or I think that's true, doesn't mean that there's any kind of...
But if they make the playoffs last year, what are the chances they move on from Russ?
I still think he does it.
0.
No, I still think he does it. I still think he does it, because I think he goes to Greg Penner and was like, listen, I don't like this guy. I don't think he can't run the system I do, but I'm so good I got us to the playoffs without it. Let me do this my way, which we talked about. I still think think he would.
That would be the equivalent of getting rid of Bo Nix right now. Like, that would be absurd.
No, it's not, because Bo Nix was handpicked by Sean Payton. Sean Payton didn't pick Russell Wilson. And we see it all the time. We see coaches jetty the quarterback that they inherited.
If Sean Payton could have sold Greg Penner on that, if you made the playoffs, ended the streak last year, so after 8 years, ended the losing season streak at 7 years, and said, hey, we're going to take on the NFL record dead cap because I don't like this guy. If he would have been able to sell Greg Penner on that, then he's the best salesman in America. Like,
maybe
there's no way he would have done that. So it worked out best for Sean Payton to lose on Christmas Eve.
Oh my God.
It did.
It did. No, we're not doing this. Sean, just because Sean couldn't stand Russell Wilson.
You don't have to believe this if you don't want to, but it all worked out exactly how Sean Payton wanted it to.
Well, he's the head coach and decision maker.
They were 8-9.
It didn't hurt his record.
It didn't hurt his record all that much in terms of his overall record. It's not like going out and having a 4-13 season. That looks bad. 8-9, but you didn't make the playoffs. You were able to bench Russ. You were able to move on from Russ.
The audacity to take a guy who inherited the same mess that the previous 5 coaches inherited before him and turns it into something decent for once. And you're like, yeah, but he could have done better if he actually was a real man and just liked the quarterback
I'm
stuck
going to tell you the same thing I told the morning show today, right? Because I'm driving in today and they're ripping me about how I was wrong, and I got to come in and admit I was right. I was wrong about Sean Payton and Bo Nix.
Sure. You were.
Okay. So the head coach I wanted Jim Harbaugh. His team's the 5 seed.
Okay.
I wanted DeMeco Ryans. His team's the 4 seed. I wanted Russell Wilson. His team's the 6 seed.
Sure.
But Bo Nix and Sean Payton getting the 7 seed means I was wrong. All 3 guys I wanted are seated ahead of the Broncos.
Oh no, you're wrong, and I can tell you why. Would you like to pick the team that I wanted that I can tell you what you're wrong about first?
I mean, DeMeco's done a pretty good job.
Okay.
Back-to-back playoffs with a rookie last year and a second-year guy this year.
Yeah. What's their record?
What are they, 10-7?
10-7, same as the Broncos. The only difference is they play in a weaker conference where 10-7 wins your division, which is the only reason they have that seed, and not in a division where you have a 15-1 team and an 11-6 team to try to compete with. The next team, the
11-6 team, coached by the other guy.
Sure. The 11-6 team, coached by Jim Harbaugh, who didn't want you. He wanted to go back to Michigan and finish wrapping up his cheating scandals before he came to the NFL. He didn't want you. I can say I want to date Ana de Armas in the mirror every day when I wake up. Guess what's not going to happen? A phone call from her. So
you never know.
You can want and want. But if that coach doesn't want you back, it's irrelevant. You were never in it for Jim Harbaugh because he ultimately didn't want you.
They took a couple trips to Ann Arbor.
Despite the boombox outside of the Michigan Stadium.
Okay.
He didn't want you. Okay. DeMeco Ryans, I could even argue, even though my explanation of them being in a weaker conference and winning their division, getting the Houston Texans getting a 4 seed is like Boise State getting a bye in the college football playoff to me.
That's the way it's structured. The Broncos got a playoff spot despite the fact they didn't beat anybody because that's how it works. It's how many wins you get.
And the Broncos getting a 7 seed is more indicative of who they are as a team and where they're at than the Houston Texans, who have been playing pretty mediocre football for good portions of the year, getting a top 4 seed because they won a division where 10-7 is good enough to win it outright.
Okay.
What else?
And the other one was Russ. He's the 6th seed.
Russ, who didn't start the first 6 games of the year and has now lost 4 straight going into the playoffs.
Let me ask you this. If the Broncos had to play a 4-game stretch at Philly, at Baltimore, where they lost 41-10, home against the Chiefs, who actually were trying to play for something, and the Bengals, what do you think the record would be? Based on how their season went, they would have been 0-4. So the same as Russ. It's not like he went out and lost to a bunch of bad teams. It's not like they've lost 4 straight and they lost to the Panthers, the Saints, and the Falcons.
No, but if the Broncos, the only reason that you're not able to say the same thing about Bo Nix and Russ in this context is because the Steelers picked up a couple of cheap wins that allowed them at the beginning of the season.
Richie,
Justin Fields,
cheap wins.
Justin Fields, who apparently wasn't good enough to finish out the year. We had to switch to Russ. Russell Wilson got to start his campaign with the Steelers up 2 wins, which means that losing the 4 at the end of the season, regardless of who they played against, didn't cost them a chance at a winning season or a playoff spot. Because if it did, you would have to have the same energy that you would toward Bo Nix if the Broncos lost this game.
You don't think Russ could have gone in and beat Atlanta? You don't think Russ could have come in here and beat the Broncos?
I don't know, because he didn't get the chance to. It's the Jarrett Stidham argument. He didn't get the chance to.
Well, he was hurt. Could he have beat the Broncos when Bo Nix put up 3 points? I'm guessing, yeah. I'm guessing he could have got that win here.
The only reason I want to give a little bit of pushback on that one is I think if Russ was playing, I think Sean Payton would have cut off his arm and sold his soul to make sure that they won that game by hook or by crook. The same
would
way
he have remembered to do things, or would he have to leave himself a sticky note on his Red Robin?
It wasn't
menu?
A sticky note. It was Sharpie. It was not a sticky note. It was Sharpie.
I mean,
okay.
And you're probably right. Like he could have gone 1-16 as long as that was the one. He would have been happy
because in his first year when the Jets came back and it was Nathaniel Hackett, I think we as fans and as media tried to contrive that narrative of the revenge game, but.
It was revenge for Hackett.
It was revenge for Hackett, but not for Sean.
No, I think he actually legitimately felt bad about what he said.
Yeah,
I think he
100%. And Hackett was not the opposing head coach; he was the offensive coordinator. Yeah. If anything, it meant more to the players than it did to Sean, who just kind of got there, after the fact. But that Steelers game with Russ, which we all wanted and circled and were praying for,
so great.
And didn't get. I do think that the Broncos would have looked different if Russ was the starter. Whether they win or they lose, who knows? But
I just think, all three of those guys that, everybody wants to tell me I was wrong. They've all had success. They've all had success.
I understand, but each success looks different. And when you factor in the context,
listen,
that the Broncos never had a shot ultimately at two of them because D'Amico wanted Houston and Jim Harbaugh didn't want them. Jim Harbaugh wanted to go back to college.
That's such revisionist history.
He said it out loud.
What came out of Broncos Park powered by Common Spirit? Here are the bullet points. Let's repeat it.
D'Amico Ryan said it out loud.
Back up the Brinks truck. His wife can fly private down to Houston every weekend to go see her family if she wants to.
You don't think that was put out there by Greg Penner, part of the richest ownership group in sports?
I just don't. I don't buy this.
I do think Greg Penner could get whoever he wanted.
I'm going to make you happy.
They wanted him.
I'm going to make you happy. I have a way in which I'll admit I was wrong.
Oh, God, this is going to be so dissatisfying.
Are you ready?
I can already taste it. Yes.
Go beat Buffalo.
Oh, my God, James.
Go beat Buffalo.
Oh, my God. You are the worst. You are seriously the worst.
Go beat Buffalo, and I'm wrong. I'm wrong. If they go lose 47-17 like Mac Jones did.
Does that mean you're right if they lose? No, it does not.
Well, was Mac Jones the answer after going 10-7 during his rookie year in New England?
No.
And then got boat raced in Buffalo in the wild card? No. Okay, let's see what the result is on Sunday.
To try to put Bo Nix and Mac Jones, but people, it is easy to forget. Mac Jones was playing some pretty good football that year that they went to the playoffs.
Yes, he was.
But stylistically, they are not the same.
I'm not saying stylistically they are. I'm saying you flash in the pan, really good rookie year, and is it sustainable? I don't know that what we've seen this year is sustainable because he hasn't done it against any good opponents. There's not a quality win on there, save for maybe at Tampa, which nobody's going to be shocked when Tampa loses in the first round. Again, I
don't know. They made a little noise last season.
Well, we'll see.
In the wild card
round.
We'll see.
But I'm not saying it's not going to happen. I've said this repeatedly. I feel better about Bo Nix now than I did on draft day, than I did in training camp, than I did week one. I feel better about it. I just don't know that he's not going to be Mac Jones. Go beat Buffalo.
Gosh.
Beat Buffalo, and Sean's my guy, and Bo's my guy.
Oh, my gosh.
I'll buy his jersey.
Talk about a self-fulfilling prophecy. Is everyone hearing this? A self-fulfilling prophecy of, okay, if he goes in and beats the red-hot Buffalo Bills juggernaut that is Josh Allen, the constant reminder of what could have been in 2018, you go do that, and then, maybe go beat the Chiefs because you should have beat them before, and last time you played them as a B squad. If they do that, then I guess I'll admit you're the self-fulfilling prophecy. You are doing that.
All right, if Russ goes and beats Baltimore, will you admit you were wrong about him? I'm willing to put it out there. They're a bigger underdog than the Broncos, which is kind of hard to believe, honestly. But
yeah, actually, that is.
See, it's real easy to criticize me putting it out there.
I won't because
Okay.
I don't think that the outcome of one wild card playoff game in a season where they kind of outpaced where they should be, where we thought they would be, and maybe even internally in the building where a lot of people.
I got one other thought on it.
Go ahead. I don't think you can put all of that on one game, which is why it's hard for me to say I'll admit I was wrong about letting go of Russell Wilson if he beats Baltimore in the postseason.
Well, Russ went into Buffalo last year and won.
Yeah, it required some fortuitous circumstances. How many second chances does Will
led the game-winning drive? It's not his fault.
Kick?
Everybody wants to give Bo Nix the win in Kansas City because they missed the kick. Okay, well, Russ did the same thing at Buffalo on Monday Night Football.
Fortunately for Russ, it worked. It didn't get Bo Nix actually didn't get the
all
payoff
I'm saying
of
is
that.
They had a quarterback last year who went in there and won. Okay, let's see if we can get the same result from this year's quarterback. Go win at Buffalo. Shut me up.
No, I'll tell you this.
Sean can shut me up. Bo can shut me up. I'll be on board forever. I will be on board. I will get the Bo Nix jersey.
You're a wiggler.
I'll be. You think Kevin Kistner is all on Bo Nix? I will be president of the fan club.
Well, listen, there was
go beat Buffalo.
There was a moment exactly 3,255 days ago that signaled what we now realize is the pinnacle for Broncos football in the last decade plus, and that was the hoisting of the Lombardi Trophy with Von Miller sealing the game with his sack on Cam Newton and all that. And now, 3,255 days later, the Broncos, in their first return to the postseason since that moment, are going to have to go up against Von Miller and the Buffalo Bills. Did you see what he posted on?
No.
I think it was. I can't remember what movie the meme is from. Is it from Pulp Fiction or something like that? It's the meme of the guy with the trench coat and the black hat, and he's like holding the revolver at something, and he's crying. Right? It's almost like the old Yeller kind of thing of like whatever. And it was like a back-to-back photos. He posted a photo of himself in a Broncos, game from the Super Bowl year, and then the next slide was like that, to where he's acknowledging like, I'm so happy that this team that I love and spent so much time with and won the Super Bowl with is back to being where they're at. And Vaughn has been a vocal supporter of the Broncos throughout all of their bad years.
Yeah.
But now he's also acknowledging that like I might have to put
old
down. Yeller down. Yeah.
That's a tough spot. And Vaughn actually has handled his post Broncos years really well in terms of his his loyalty to the Broncos. But look, Bo Nix, you know what else he can do with a win? He can jump Tim Tebow on the list of all-time Broncos quarterbacks. Tim Tebow won a playoff game. Only quarterback ever drafted by the Broncos to win a playoff game, which is a crazy stat.
And I don't even want to hear the people in the mentions in the comments about it, because John Elway was not drafted. We're very fortunate that John Elway had the leverage to go play baseball, and that the Broncos were able to work out a deal for that to even happen. Because John Elway could have easily gone to a lot of other places.
But I mean, and that's what's awesome about what's coming up in 6 days. It's the opportunity. That's what's awesome about getting into the tournament. I don't want to hear all these people say, "Oh, they got in." That's all. No, this ain't Tad Boyle and the CU Buffs. You got an invite. Oh, we're happy about it every single
Somebody
year.
was catching a stray.
We're happy about it. Like, no, you're in it. Great, you're in it. Go take advantage of it. Otherwise, all you did was practice for another week. You got to play another week.
No, see, that's
one more week than the Jaguars.
That's diminutive to dismiss it.
No, it's not.
Yes, because what they did was break a barrier that nobody on the current team had been able to do for the better part of the last decade. So I think that if you ask Garrett Bowles and Cortland Sutton, and how about freaking Justin Simmons, who spends all this time with the Broncos, and the first year that they leave, he fought through all that. He was an Iron Man through all those seasons, never missing a snap. And then the first year, he's got to watch the Broncos not only thump his new team head to head, but then watch them make the postseason while he misses it, when in the preseason, his team was supposed to be the sexy new contender. So if you ask those guys, all you accomplished was just practice another week than the Jacksonville Jaguars? No way, man. It's important to a culture building and a foundational aspect that these guys are forming, that they've proven to themselves that they can do that.
I do agree with that portion of it, in terms of culture and winning is contagious, and some of the we expect to win. Like, I agree with that. But I do think if you go lose 47-17, let's use the Mac Jones example, you'd have been better off to go 7-10. You'd be picking higher.
Yeah, I disagree. I don't think you ever apologize for making the postseason. It's one thing if you miss the wild card cut and you're 8-9 and you miss the postseason, but you're not really. I guess you can have that argument. But you made the playoffs. You had a chance to go dancing. And
we're gonna find out. And people got upset about this tweet today. But are the Broncos legit, or are they a fraud? We're gonna find out. And they don't even have to win to prove they're legit. I'm not a moral victories guy, but if you go up there and you lose 31-28. On a last-second field goal by the Bills, you're legit. You proved it. Now you lost, but you go lose 47-17. You were a fraud. You just beat nobody. Andy Reid gave you a free ticket to the playoffs.
This is completely unrelated, but is it cold in here for you? Like, is it unseasonably cold? Like, it could be that, or it could be.
I always run a little hot.
It could be the freezing cold take that somebody had.
Yes.
On April 25th, I believe it was, of 2024. Let's just revisit that for a moment.
Yep, let's see it.
You're right. It's not cold in here in the studio. It's just cold on Twitter for James Merilatt, who said in 2025, Sean Peyton is going to be on the Fox set while some sucker is stuck with Bo Nix and Russell Wilson's dead cap. Wow, what a terrible decision. And let's make sure we get as much engagement as possible and hashtag Broncos at the end.
Here's the first thing.
Oh,
that is not 100%.
It just felt so good.
It's not 100% certainty that that's not true.
Well, no, it is true, because Sean's not on a Fox set.
It's January 6th.
Oh my gosh, Sean's gonna leave.
If you want to put it back up, it said in 2025.
Oh my gosh. Okay. You're right. Okay, so in
So I
your
have
world,
359 more days for that to be correct. So hit me on January 1st, 2026, freezing cold
Trey,
takes.
mark that down on the calendar, please. January 1st, 2026. I need to re-pull this back up.
Then it's officially wrong. Then it's officially wrong.
Oh my God. Only you can take a freezing cold take out of the freezer and try to put it on thaw for a couple minutes here at the end.
I'm just saying, if we're going to be accurate, it's not incorrect yet.
Well, I've called back to a lot of different moments. We called back to 3,255 days ago, the day that the Broncos won Super Bowl 50. We talked back to the start of 2015 and 2016 for playoff seasons and winning seasons, respectively. I'll give my last moment of the game that really kind of stuck with me to the degree where I got a little bit of goosebumps.
Mm-hmm.
And without the context, without the prior context that I'm about to give, it's just a cool moment. But if you go back to a date that I'm sure you'll be very familiar with, which is January 17th, 1999. Do you know what happened on January 17th, 1999?
January 17th, 1999. That would have been John Elway's final game at Mile High Stadium. They beat the Jets 23-10 in the AFC title game.
That is correct. It also signified John Elway's last game in front of a home crowd.
Yep.
Right. And caught up in the emotions of all of that. Do you remember what John Elway did at the conclusion of the victory?
He did a lap around the stadium.
He did a lap around the stadium, giving out high fives to the
Carrying
fans.
the trophy, the AFC Championship trophy for a while.
Yep.
And then I think he realized this sucker's heavy.
Yep.
Yeah.
So he did that. And after righting a lot of the sins of the previous with this Broncos team, Bo Nix did a lap around the field and gave high fives to all of the fans it was cold, by the way, at that point in the game. It was cold, and he high fived everybody, and there was emotions from Garrett Bowles and Cortland Sutton. And it really just I didn't have that prior context when I saw it at first, but then after, shout out to our guy, Mike Kliss, who is like a historian when it comes to the Broncos and all that stuff, and has a new book out actually about the Broncos Super Bowl years, which I'm about halfway through. When I saw the and it's not to say they're like, oh, they both gave high fives, like Bo Nix is the next John. That's not what I'm trying to go with it. What I'm saying is this, the ending of this season, while I still think they have goals that they have in front of them, I think they feel that way. I know I feel that way, and you and a lot of other people. This season felt very purifying. And that moment of ending it and solidifying the winning season with a playoff berth together, and Bo Nix taking the lap and embracing it. There hasn't been a quarterback here in Broncos country since Peyton Manning that's done anything of respect enough to earn that kind of thing. You don't just do that after a Sunday afternoon victory against the Jets or whatever it is. So I just felt like that was a really cool moment where I almost, especially after learning the context, I got like goosebumps a little bit of like, wow. And I jumped on with the post-game show with Cecil after the game, and he asked me, is Bronco Magic back? And I said, well, listen, I don't know. There's a lot of things to come with it, but I'll tell you this, I'm starting to feel it. Whether it's back or not, officially, I don't know, but I'm starting to feel things that I haven't felt, as it relates to the Broncos since the Peyton Manning years that that are honestly such a distant memory at this point.
I would agree with that. And the Vele touchdown is kind of part of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of like, that just doesn't happen unless things are just, there's a little bit of a magic to that. The touchdown wound up only tying the game, but the touchdown to Marvin Mims against Cincinnati, I know that's on the road, but it's just a magical kind of thing.
Yep.
They've got a little bit of that feel. They do. So I think there are two next steps, though. One is go show you belong. Okay, go do that. And then next year, we got months to talk about it. But it's different to do it with expectations versus when people are saying you're going to go, 5-12. Now they're going to have some expectations next year. That's great. Expectations are a privilege. But let's see how they react to that. But yeah, I mean, it's the first time to legitimately be excited about what's happening on the field since Super Bowl 50, and that's pretty cool.
I agree. I couldn't wait to do today's show to kind of bask in reflection on, again, I think it's important. You can't fully appreciate where you are if you don't remember where you came from.
Go beat Buffalo.
And well, that's next, right? And I can't wait to get into that, in the coming days. You and I'll be able to chop it up again a little later this week. And they have to go out and try to take down one of the better teams, one of the premier teams in the league, premier teams in the AFC. And the odds are going to be stacked against them. The, statistics, the advanced data, all that stuff is not going to roll in their favor. And they're going to have to do something that is pretty improbable or pretty unlikely, but not impossible. And I think that a lot of those things that I mentioned earlier about just like the small little moments that add up, whether it's, looking for that extra pitch if you're Bo Nix on Javonte Williams, or Devon Vele kind of having that miraculous stumble catch, or putting together these improbable like 11, 12-minute drives and things of that nature. Bo Nix throwing a game-tying touchdown pass against the Bengals when he's flushed against the sideline and, whips it into Marvin Mims right there at the end. Just little things like that give you genuine evidence that it is possible for them to do those things. And for all those reasons, I can't wait to dive into this one a little more. And we will see you all tomorrow for the next edition of Coffee Break.